Hey everybody, this is Tommy Canale. Welcome back to the Jim Feist Pro Football Handicapping Show here at Don DeMarco's Pizzeria and Wine Bar, located at 9785 West Charleston Boulevard. Typically we are on the patio, but it's always usually a nice day here in Vegas. Today is not one of them. We have a cold, windy, I'll call it somewhat blustery day here to do our last show before we transition into the show going. Still promoted by Don DeMarco, is going to go to Jim's house here. And Jim, speaking of that, do you have a guest for next week?
I'm not sure.
Are we doing the show next week at your house? You are.
I am doing the show next week. I might have Greg De Palma.
Okay.
My producer.
Sure.
He lives in North Carolina and knows a lot. We work together a lot. He might be the guest, and we're gonna cover everything. We call this the Pro Football Handicapping Show, but we're gonna cover everything. We're gonna talk golf. We're gonna talk tennis. We're gonna talk everything we want. For the summer, it'll be fun.
Awesome.
4 months until we come back here in August, and of course, this is all sponsored by Don DeMarco's right here on West Charleston. What's it? 9785 West Charleston.
You got it, man.
God, I've heard that address so much. I actually remembered it.
You did remember it.
You didn't think I could remember anything, did you?
Well, yes, I do. You remember lines like they were yesterday.
That's true. But I only remember lines from like 40 years ago.
Well, before we get into our guest who we have next to you, let me ask you something, because we've talked about Dom's and their happy hour and their pizza and their pasta and everything. But there's one thing we don't talk about, and every time all of us get together afterwards for lunch, is something I see everybody get, and that's their salads. I mean, their salads are fantastic. Am I not lying?
The salads are great. Stracciatella soup is unbelievable, and nobody ever talks about their desserts.
Yeah, desserts.
Which I never get, but I see them occasionally, and they look amazing.
Well, we're going to have some. Well, I'm going to have a salad today. I don't know about a dessert.
Okay.
All right. Next to you is Alex White, a third-generation handicapper and sports betting analyst, Sports by the Book on YouTube. They were with us one time during the season. Alex, welcome back.
Thank you so much. Excited to be back.
And next to you is your father, is one of the most well-respected names in the sports betting industry, Ken White. Ken, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Tommy. Thanks for having me in, and Alex today. Always a pleasure to be able to sit at a radio, TV show with your daughter talking sports. So
we're going to do it.
To be here.
Jim, we talked about this last week, and I want to dive more into it today to start off and get Ken's opinion and Alex's opinion on this. Simply this, the NFL product as a whole. And you had said last week that there's a number of bad teams in this league. So how do we fix this?
Time. I think time will fix it, because you've got to build teams from. Well, first of all, you got to have good organization. That helps. Like the Jets don't have an organization. That's why they're terrible always. But you got to have good coaching. And this is a subject I really want to talk about. We talk about head coaches a lot, but it's really, I think, the offensive and defensive coordinator that don't get talked about enough. You take a team that has a good head coach and then you lose the defensive and offensive coordinator, or just one of them, and you see a team fall off a cliff. And we should spend more time, and maybe they should spend more money paying these guys so they don't leave to get head coaching jobs, because when they leave, there's a big difference in quality of what they're doing.
Alex, what do you think?
That's so funny. I've been thinking about that, because that is at the top of my list for the off season, is to really dive in and look at all the coordinators. Because you take a situation like Seattle, who went and got Clint Kubiak from New Orleans, right? Who was also, before New Orleans, in San Francisco with Sam Darnold when he was Brock Purdy's backup. And you put those two together, of course, they beefed up the O-line. They did a lot of really good moves. But looking at the coordinators, I think is so important when you're really taking a deep dive into these teams and trying to learn who these teams are. But I think they're super important, so that was on my list to do. It's funny you brought it up right away.
Alex, on that thing, because there's been a lot of offensive and defensive coordinator positions opening up in the NFL. So who's going to fill these spots?
Yeah, coaching is such a big part of every sport. Obviously, we just talked basketball today. And
yeah.
Your philosophy was taking as many charges as you could, 7 a game. Well, that comes down to defense. So in basketball, I've always bet defensive coaches. And in football, I also love defensive coaches, because especially when they go out and get a good coordinator in offense. So I've always said this: Some guys are meant to be coordinators. Some guys are meant to be head coaches. Not all the coordinators are meant to be head coaches. And that's the problem most of the time. When a coordinator gets a head coaching job, he's not the CEO. He's better at just running his department, and he can't run the entire company. And that's why those guys, they don't make it. Sometimes they do, and they get a second chance there. So it's all a crapshoot when you're hiring somebody. If I was hiring a guy, it would never be a coordinator. I'd want a guy that has been a head coach before. I want to make sure he's got experience. And coaching can turn around any team in the NFL, because I will tell you right now, the talent from the best team to the bottom is not that much difference.
I totally agree. We don't spend enough time talking about the offensive, defensive coordinators, or even the quarterback coaches. And they bring in this million coaches that we never talk about underneath. But is Andy Reid the reason Kansas City went through that stretch of winning? Was it Bill Belichick, or was it other people in the group that should have been getting credit over those years?
So then let me ask you, Ken, this then. Based on what Jim's saying about you have to have good organizations. How important then is the owner?
Everything starts from the top. Everything. So
but we got some owners
you
that aren't good owners.
Jets. You mentioned the Jets. How much money has the owner made, though, in the last 20 years? I mean, he probably bought the organization for $10 million, and now it's worth $1 billion, But they don't win. So it doesn't really matter to him if they win or not, because he's making money. Some guys, they're competitive and they want to win. Some just want to make money. But I'll tell you this, when we talk about the head coaching and the coordinators, they're just the most important part, because, like I said, the talent level is so close. Look at Seattle. They win the Super Bowl, and what were they 2 years ago? Pete Carroll got fired because they were so bad, and Pete Carroll's a good head coach.
Yeah.
But he just didn't run the organization the way it's been run.
Well, Pete Carroll was a good head coach.
He was.
Now, you reach the top, there's diminishing returns after in almost everything. Now, I'm not going to knock age, but sometimes you have to keep up with what the youth is willing to follow and listen to, because you lose your voice, they don't listen anymore. It's a whole different thing.
Alex, you brought up Kubiak, and now we have Seattle South here in Las Vegas, because now they just brought Rick Dennison down. So what's your thoughts about these coaches being picked from Seattle now back down here to Las Vegas? What's your thoughts on them being here, and then who's going to replace them up in Seattle?
Well, in Seattle, I believe they were interviewing some of the San Francisco position players for that OC. They were going to stay in-house, and now they're kind of branching out a little bit, but we'll see what happens. I like the move here in Las Vegas. I was kind of hoping they'd go more the Seattle route, in the sense of Seattle went and got Mike Macdonald from Baltimore, who's a defensive head coach, right? He was the DC, and the Ravens had one of the best defenses when he was there. So what Seattle did was they looked around in their division and they said, oh, we have all these great offensive minds, McVay, Shanahan. Let's have a defense that can beat their offense. What did the Raiders do? They went offensively just like the rest of their division. So I think that makes it a little bit tough, but I do like that they went young. I like that he's an innovator. I also like that he's likes his tight ends, so the 12 and 13 personnel. I think they have that here with the Raiders. I just, I don't know. They need to get the right pieces around him, right, to support him, because he's definitely young. And I just went through every place he has been. I mean, he wasn't even a coordinator for that long, and now to be a head coach.
Now we have the Raiders have the first round.
Oh wait, now you're claiming them. Early in the year, you put them in Pahrump.
No, I have them for sale. We have the first round draft choice. A young man from Indiana. They win the national championship. Can he do it without the pieces around him? Does he have? I mean, this is a big jump from college to pro, and we don't have a very good team around him. The offensive line is weak. We've got a good, decent running back if they use him properly, but there's a lot of pieces missing.
There's a lot to unpack there with this organization. They haven't made a solid move yet since they've been here, and I don't think they made a solid move in their last couple of years when they were in California. So it even comes down to the draft picks they've made. We've had horrible draft picks time and time again. And I'll tell you this, the Raiders would have been a far better football team this season if they didn't lose their all-pro left tackle and their all-pro right guard early in the year. Their offensive line was decimated because of two major injuries, and they had no depth. Who should have lost their job? The GM, because he had no depth in the offensive line. That's who should have lost his job. The coach had no chance to win with the worst offensive line in the NFL. And who gave him that line? The general manager did. I don't even know who it is, and I can't even remember that. Pete Carroll should have never really lost his job. He just didn't have the pieces to work with. Now you're bringing in Kubiak, and I just said, and I didn't realize I was going to make a statement like that I would never hire an offensive coordinator as my head coach if he didn't have any experience. There's a little bit of an asterisk with that I've seen over the years. Guys that their fathers were head coaches at one time are more ready for those positions than people who haven't had anybody close to them in that position. So he has a little bit of a heads up now and a chance to be successful because his dad is feeding the right information and what to do and how to do it.
Now, perfect. Now we look at the Chargers, who's in the same division.
Yep.
They lost their offensive line.
Yes, they did.
In the same way. And they have Herbert, who's a pro, has been a pro for a long time, and he looks pretty good, but he's not been able to deliver. Now they got Harbaugh at head coach. We know he's got a resume that's incredible. But they were not that good this year. I mean, they got to the playoffs, but then they got destroyed by the Pats. What do you blame there? GM again?
Things that are important never change. The NFL, the game is won in the trenches. Obviously, the quarterback's the most important part of the field, but the game is won in the trenches. Where was the Super Bowl won? In the trenches, because the Patriots could not stop the Seattle pass rush. And that's the only reason they won the football game.
Ken, let me ask you this then. The Jets have made some comments late. They may want the number one pick. If you're the Raiders, do you trade it?
I don't, because I think this kid's the real deal. Because you have to, not just the talent, but I think you have to have that type of person that's going to be a leader. That's going to be early to practice, late to practice. He's going to study. He's not going to be a partier off the field. We know what type of life he's had. He's a kid that's going to give you 110% of what he can give you every single day. He'll be a leader.
Alex, you're big into college football, so what's your thoughts on it?
I say the Raiders should take Fernando Mendoza. I really do believe that. I agree with that. I think he'd be a really good fit here in Las Vegas, and you mentioned kind of having the bad luck with their picks. He feels like a pretty good one here. Get a good O-line around him.
I thought they made some horrendous picks. They took a cornerback in the first round because he was from Ohio State. And he was everybody else had the guy going in the fifth round. And you can't make selections like that. I followed their draft every year, and their draft picks were horrendous.
Well, the Browns do the same thing every year. Were they copying them?
They may have. They're some bad organizations. You go for a guy like Henry Ruggs, and you never expect what happened to happen to him. That was bad luck. Yeah. But the picking the kid from Ohio State in the first round that was going to go in the fifth or sixth, they didn't do their homework. They could have gotten him in the third or fourth round easily.
When you bring a kid like Mendoza here, then you have a weak offensive line. I don't know if you could fix it.
It'll be better next year. More experience from the guys that were there. And if they get the two guys that were one was, I don't know their names. I can't remember who they were, but I know I take him off the list, and he's a 7.5 player in my book, and the next guy's a 6. It's a 1.5 drop off for one player. You can't have that. That's the GM's fault. There's a million guys in the CFL that are better than the backups that we had here, and I don't know if that's because they didn't want to spend money, but I could have given them a hell of a lot better depth chart than what they had.
Well, the Raiders are doing a real good job paying coaches that they don't have anymore.
Yeah,
that's a problem.
They got 4 on the payroll right now.
Yeah.
Ken, let me ask you this. Go ahead, Alex.
One more thing, just with taking that, keeping the first pick and taking Mendoza, they are in a good position, and they're kind of putting their feelers out with Max Crosby, and he is 28 years old, and I think it's a good time. I think good organizations kind of recognize that, right, and get the most for what they can. I know that he's a great defensive player, and it kind of stings, but I think they got to go that route rather than trading the Jets and getting out of the first round pick.
One of the things that I keep hearing is the Giants made the best offseason hiring the head coach and bringing Harbaugh in. So what do they do to add a dart? Who do they get? Because they got the 5th round pick, or the 5th pick overall. What do they need to get around him?
That's, I haven't studied it close enough. I'm not close to that situation, but I will tell you this, that Harbaugh will turn the Giants around and they'll be in the playoffs. If Dart can get the job done, but we've seen Harbaugh win a Super Bowl with a guy that wasn't a star quarterback. So he's gonna make Dart a guy that doesn't lose the game. Just protect the football. There'll be a strong run team. There'll be an outstanding defensive team. They'll be in the playoffs next year because he knows what he's doing. He knows how to put the puzzle together. So I don't know who he needs to draft, but when I say that we shouldn't trade the pick to the Jets, if the Jets want to give you the world, like the Vikings gave to the Cowboys for Herschel Walker, take it.
Take
the 10
that's
guys.
a great point. You're right.
Because we really don't know if Mendoza's going to be the guy. We think he is. We think he's going to be a great quarterback. But if they're going to give you 10 guys that have already played in the NFL and that you can make them better, however many they give, if it's 5 or 6, take them.
Like Ricky Williams.
You could rebuild an entire team in
one
year.
guy.
Right.
And we know how bad the Jets organization is.
Stefanski.
They're willing to make a bad deal, then take the deal.
Stefanski, a pretty good coach, and played for a pretty bad organization. Now he's in Atlanta, which I think is a pretty good team in a bad division. So if you look at this year and you say, okay, what team could go from a bad year to a great year overnight? Just like what the Pats just did. Stefanski, good coach. The quarterback issues there is real, but bad division. They could win that division. Once you win the division, you're in the playoffs. And when you're in the playoffs, you can do anything. What do you think about that hire?
Yeah, I think it's a good hire because Stefanski is an offensive guy that had the best defense in football. So he's an offensive guy. And, again, he was a coordinator that got the job at the Browns. He had never had any head coaching experience. The next time around, he knows all the mistakes he made in Cleveland. They're not going to happen in Atlanta. He's going to be far off, much better coach.
He is a much better
the second time. That experience is invaluable because that's the number one thing I start with in coaching and players when I'm rating players out. What type of experience do they have at this level? Because you're not going to be very good. That's why Mendoza is going to struggle in his first year without NFL experience.
He is a better owner there, in my opinion.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, the guy that wants to really win.
Yeah.
Going to the Falcons from the Browns, I think is a jump, real big jump.
Jim, let me ask you this. The franchise tags will be coming out in the next couple weeks.
They have started, yes.
Is one of the names I'm hearing is Daniel Jones of the Colts. Is he a franchise player?
The problem with him, he is an injury. I don't know if you can recover from that quickly. It's Achilles, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes
I mean, he's tagged.
That takes a couple of years.
We saw that with Kirk Cousins.
Right.
Cousins last year was horrendous. But when he got to play this year, Kirk Cousins looks like he should be the starting quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons. I don't know if he'll be there. I think he's going to end up going somewhere else.
I think he's already gone.
Yeah, could be. But what a difference.
Right.
Because he had time to heal and get 100%. So if Daniel Jones is going to take a full year to recover, he's not really a franchise
Is
guy.
George Pickens with the Cowboys, the wide receiver, is he a franchise player? His name's out there
I
too.
think they just did that.
Oh, they did tag him?
I believe they already did that.
They already tagged
I
him.
think so.
Okay. I'm surprised by that one.
I say wide receivers are a dime a dozen, really. There's so many of them out there.
Right. That's why I was surprised. I'm like, okay, if you want to tag that, go ahead. But I was shocked. Were you out or no?
I wasn't shocked. I did think they were going to go that route with him.
Okay.
But
Is he better than CeeDee Lamb?
when CeeDee Lamb was out, he put up
Yeah.
basically the same numbers there with Prescott.
All I heard, it was a bad attitude in Pittsburgh. That we get those wide receivers, they call them divas because they've got huge egos.
Is that a requirement for a wide receiver to be a diva?
That's what they love to say about him, and it just means to me, bad locker room guy. That's all it means to me.
Where does Tua end up? Is he out of the league, or will somebody give him another shot?
Put him in the right offense.
Like where though?
Maybe San Francisco.
Really?
He would fit in Shanahan's offense really well. Yeah.
They already got 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah, I know they got plenty of quarterbacks, so he's not going to end up there. But maybe I don't know who else needs a
I
quarterback.
hear right. What's the wide receiver from? They just left Miami. He's going to go to Kansas City.
But Tua's also a problem.
Tyreek
because the
Hill?
concussions.
Tyreek Hill, yes.
He's one concussion away from retiring. Tua is. Why invest money in a guy that one hit you could be out?
Reality
for the
is
entire
he
year.
shouldn't even be playing. It's so dangerous.
What about Geno Smith? Somebody pick him up again?
Oh, come on. That's done.
You think he's done?
I don't think so. I think he gets another opportunity
You do?
because he played behind the worst offensive line in football. If you can't run the ball, you're never going to have time to pass the football.
He's been in the league 12 years. I mean,
He
he's not a
has.
kid.
He has. No, but he can play still.
Okay.
What about Joe Mixon, running back from Texas? He's on the free agent market.
You have to look because running backs have a shelf life, and when they hit that point, they fall off the cliff. They're done. It's just too abuse. It's like a boxer. You can only take so many punches, and then you're not any good anymore. The running backs take so many hits. They have a 6-year life, and then that's it.
Is that true for a handicapper too? You can only take so many punches.
I don't know. I've taken so many, so I'm kind of evidence that you can take it. I've lost more unders in overtime than a person can stand in a lifetime. It's a punch every time I get it, so I think you can handle it.
Alex, let me ask you this. So these teams, the 49ers, Chiefs, Lions, and Packers, who do you see having the biggest year next year?
Ooh, that's a great question. I mean, I think the Packers were right there. I think they just had some injuries at the end. I did like the move when they got Micah Parsons and definitely helped their defense. But they're kind of like the Ravens were last year, and that is the interesting thing about John Harbaugh because no coach had more fourth quarter losses where they had such a good lead. So while it was a good hire, we'll see how he does there. But Packers, I mean, they kind of dealt with the same things. I think the Lions, I mean, they finished last in that division. Technically the same record as Minnesota, but still Minnesota had the head-to-head. So they've got to have a better year than we did. But talk about a team that lost a ton of coordinators over the years. It's been tough for them, but they still have all the pieces there. I mean, I love their two-headed monster at running back with Montgomery and Gibbs. And, I mean, Jared Goff's playing the best he ever has there for Campbell. So I don't know. I guess I'll go Detroit Lions.
Jim, let me ask you this. With Mahomes probably not going to be at the starting of the season,
It's another Achilles injury.
what do the Chiefs look like next year?
I don't like them. I think they've hit their peak. I think they're getting old. The head coach is getting old.
Who's quarterbacking? Geno Smith?
How many teams are going to put him on?
Well, it's not Minshew because he got hurt as well. So I don't know who the backup is now.
I don't either. Do you?
Maybe they bring in Tua.
Yeah, maybe it's Tua.
But yeah, you're right. Maybe Andy Reid is, he's at the end of his career right now, and Mahomes, if he's not 100%, Kelsey's not, and they had some injuries this year with the Chiefs. So, they like I said, the talent level from the top to bottom isn't that great. So, if you got everybody, all the pieces in place, you can make a run. And it's the funny thing that I'll bring it up, and I don't know how you feel about it, but I hear it all the time. The NFL's fixed, and the referees are they're hired by the NFL to call penalties for the teams that the NFL wants to win. Do you think the NFL wanted Seattle and New England in the Super Bowl? Are you kidding me? It's a league that you can. No, they didn't want those two teams in there.
That's ridiculous. People would say that.
Yeah.
And they just believe everything. Every conspiracy theory. That's what they.
The league's on the up and up. It's like I said, the talent level is so close. The parity in the NFL is greater than any other professional sports league in the world. And that's why it's a great league, and there's a lot of violence, and that's why people love to watch it because the hits are amazing. So I'm interested to see what they have to do with, the onside kick was such a great part of the game, and they took it away.
They did.
I mean, you're allowed to do it, but you have to tell the other team, hey, we're onside kicking. Seriously, you're going to have to tell them. So now they may take that out of the game.
Maybe they got to tell them now where are you going to throw the ball
4th and 13. Yeah, right, exactly. Make you do some studying. What's going to happen. I thought it used to be a great play because it was a surprise.
Right.
I think they should bring it back. I hate the kickoff.
There's no more Devin Hester.
The kickoff is basically just a free play.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Ken, let me ask you this. The Bears, is this a fluke season or are they for real?
Well, Ben Johnson looks like he's the real deal with the, great offensive coordinator. We saw he made a difference leaving Detroit. And that's why I judge coaches. What happens when the coach leaves? To whatever their program is? The offense dropped off drastically, and what happened? He goes to the Bears. He turned them into a winner. And I watched the Bears team a couple of games early in the season. I said, all you got to do is blitz Caleb Williams, and he's going to be a wreck. He can't play under pressure. But Johnson put a great game plan around him, and they really succeeded, and they're the real deal together. They're going to have to be, in the playoff hunt next year again.
Liam Cohen, he left Tampa. Baker goes down. They had injuries there and everything. The offensive line. He might have got hurt too. But then he goes up to Jacksonville. He turned them around. They made the playoffs.
Yeah.
And Lawrence, for the first time in 6 years, he actually looked decent.
Alex, go ahead. You had something.
Well, just about both of those two teams, actually, I do like to look at turnover and turnover differential at the end of the year, kind of going into the next year. And those are two teams that are probably going to have some regression to the mean. Both of them were very fortunate with the ball bouncing their way. Now, there is something to it with creating turnovers, and it's Dennis Allen, right? DC at Chicago. I think is that right?
DC?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know that he is a very good defensive coordinator and kind of taught that, but I do think both those teams, so they might take a step back from last year. Won't be quite as many wins.
Before we get into March Madness, Ray, you had a question in regards to football. Ray, you had a question for football before we get into March Madness. Give me one.
I already got Atlanta to win the division at plus 290 because I'm that good. Jim.
He said he's got Atlanta at plus 90 to win the division next year.
Yeah.
I want more. I want to go more at Atlanta at 290. Do you think unconvincingly Atlanta is the team to win?
I think they'll win their division. That's when I'm looking at a future to go somewhere from nowhere, I try to get a weak division with one team that looks like they might be in place to go somewhere where they weren't a year ago. And I like the addition of Stefanski.
Okay.
And that division is very weak. I mean, the Saints aren't that good. They had a couple of wins. Yeah, they have a young quarterback. You don't have that many good teams in that division. I'm not sold on the Panthers. And Baker and company down there in Tampa fell apart a little bit this year with Cohen leaving and the injuries and stuff like that. And who knows if Evans is even going to be there. So I look at Atlanta as the most solid team there. So I see they win the division, they get the playoffs. Stefanski's a good coach. The quarterback's the question. We don't know if he's going to develop. I would prefer if Cousins would have stayed, but I think he's gone.
Yes.
I just want to add to the point. I think I would lean more of Cousins staying there because Stefanski's there. He was his offense coordinator in Minnesota. Does Cousins want to chase the big bag of money with the family and all the kids? He settled down in Atlanta and they left him down there. I lean that he's staying there.
But what I read was he was gone.
I did read he was gone too.
I read he was already gone.
Yeah, I read he was already gone as well. Yeah, I think he's gone.
It might be too early to put that in cement. But, there's another team that's in dire need for a quarterback that has a pretty good, solid roster besides the quarterback, and that would be Minnesota.
They got to figure something out. A quarterback.
J.J. McCarthy is not the answer.
No.
Yeah, they had their guy.
They did. They let him go.
Yeah, how did they do that?
Well, their GM got fired the next day.
Right back to what you said about GMs.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let me ask all three of you here on the panel, because I think it's interesting for the people watching at home and people that don't do this every day for a living. So now the football season's over, Jim. I know you transitioned into other sports, but what is your summer like preparing for the next football season coming up?
Well, I prepare for the next football season by reading everything, studying everything, but I also do very well in baseball and college basketball when you get to the NCAAs. And the only time I really focus deeply in the NBA is when they get to the playoffs. So I'm pretty busy. Now, after the All-Star break in July, I'm kind of worn out. I take a little bit of time off. But I do study football, pro football especially. Now, I backed away from college football. Now, these two here are experts. So I'm just telling you what I did. And they didn't, and they're happy for it because they did really well. I backed away from college ball because of the NIL and the portal making it too confusing to start a season with 70 new players and say, okay, I'm going to just focus over here and let that go for a couple of years. And that's what I did. But this year I'm going to spend a little more time in the colleges.
Alex, let me ask you then, what's your spreadsheet look like for people transferring all over the place in college football?
Oh my gosh, it's always crazy, especially now with the NIL money and everything. But yeah, I mean that's what really it takes to go into it. I think he made a great point about reading as much as you can. He always taught me that. Trying to find every beat writer for every school if you are doing college, reading up on for the NFL, and then the player power ratings, and that starts with him and my grandpa. So that's what we use for the off season. But I'm with you. I keep it going all year because I've been handicapping hockey since the start of the season. We got a break now, but enjoying this part with the Olympics, and then college basketball. Then it's baseball time.
Ken, when do you start putting your power rankings together, like more solidified, I should say?
So I brought my college basketball stuff, and I'm betting college basketball, women's college basketball, and college baseball right now. And I didn't realize this was a complete NFL show. You know how many bets I made in the NFL this year? Maybe 3. And I made more than that in the Super Bowl, but the Super Bowl was where I made some prop bets on. But during the regular season, I made about 3, but I was kicking myself after the game. And I said, Alex, I had the Seattle Seahawks #1 in the NFL on November 26th. They were 30-1 to win it all at that point. Why didn't I bet Seattle when I had them #1 in the NFL from that point to the end of the year as the #1 team? And that was all math and my models that are crunching the numbers of every single game. So my model goes through the entire box score. But the reason I'm not betting in the NFL, I've got 120 plays in college football, whether you're counting FCS plays. That's where I've done really well the last couple of years. So I bet the FBS and the FCS. And there's little room for the bankroll left to bet NFL, and I know how tough of a sport it is to beat, so I might as well just bet what I do. So over the years, I didn't even watch one game in the NFL this year. The only game I watched in the NFL was the Super Bowl. But I can tell you what's going on because I keep track of it through all of my numbers.
You did have a Christmas party that was on a Thursday, and it was the Rams and Seahawks second matchup. So that was on.
Oh, yeah,
You must have been there. You must have been there.
I did watch part of that, and I did make a bet on that game. I did bet the game under, and it went flying over.
Are you into March Madness thing, Ken?
Yeah, I love basketball, handicap basketball, because there's so many teams.
Yeah, I want
When
to.
there's 32 teams, it's so much easier to follow. You know the information that's out there. I'd like to dig into information that people don't know about,
Right.
And finding players that are worth 6 points to the betting line that no one even knows that person plays in college basketball because he plays for Mercer University or Louisiana Lafayette or something like that.
Exactly.
You put a rating on every player.
Every player.
Every team.
Every player and every team.
When do you sleep?
Most of this gym now is automated.
Oh.
Yeah, I've got it all automated, and I'm this last year I've been really focusing on even tightening those ratings even tighter to make them.
Do you look at
as
KenPom?
I possibly can.
Do you use KenPom?
I do look at KenPom a little bit, but I've got all my own stuff is exactly like KenPom's. So the model that I put together this year, my numbers look very identical to what KenPom puts out.
I mean, I'm very impressed with Michigan. I mean, the only time they lost was at home to Wisconsin, who had to hit 15 threes to beat them in that game. And since then, they've been beating teams by 10-plus points. Again, last night, they win by 11. Had Purdue down at Purdue by 22 at one point. They look really good. Houston starts to look good. Iowa State just gets them by setting a record with only 3 turnovers the entire game. But a team that nobody's talking about is the defending champions in Florida, who continue to win. Florida's one of those teams for me that I just have I don't like the coach. I'll be blunt about it at all. I'd be okay if he was never in the sport anymore, but he is, and they continue to win. But Ken, where do you have Florida?
I have number 2, and Dalton's done a really nice job. I think all these coaches at the top, again, it's all about coaching and bringing in the right players to fit your system. But Dusty Mays, outstanding coach. John Shire with Duke. He's really surprised me because that's big shoes to follow when you're coaching a guy.
Do you have Michigan 1?
I've got Michigan 1, the Gators 2, Duke 3, Houston 4, Arizona 5. That's another really good coach.
Yeah.
Tommy Lloyd's got a great program.
Yep.
So,
What do you have UConn?
UConn's number 12.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not quite as good as they have
They
been.
don't cover any spreads, but they win.
They haven't been covering spreads.
Well, Iowa State pulls off the win the other night. What do you think about that?
And they're very good. I've got Iowa State right there, number 6 in the country. And again, that game, when my model shows they only had 3 turnovers, it's gonna give a little bit extra to the other side. That's outside the norm, so it's just noise that you have to adjust to. But College basketball has been very, very good for me this year.
The number 1 team to the number 10 team.
Oh, you know how many games I've watched? 0.
You don't need it. Well, you use the number.
Yeah. Let me ask.
What's the difference between a 1 and a 10?
My power ratings right now, 10 points.
Where is Illinois in your list?
Illinois, another well-coached basketball team, but I think they're down the
Brad
list.
Underwood. And I think they could be a surprise in the tournament if they get the right draw.
So shout out to Chris Andrews because he put out this prop just today, but it is which will the winning team come from which conference? And right now Big 12 is a short favorite plus 140.
Really?
Big 10 plus 170.
I like that.
That's what I like because I want Michigan right now. I think is plus 350, maybe 4 to 1. That might be giving them. I don't even know if they're that high right
And
now.
I can see with the Big Ten, they got Michigan, they got Illinois, Michigan State if they get on a run. Yeah, you always want them in March. I see Big 12, you got Arizona, you got Iowa State, you got Houston.
Yeah.
I get all that. But I like the Big Ten this year.
Yeah, so and then just continuing, ACC is 4 to 1, of course, because how good Duke has been. SEC 7 to 1, Big East 9 to 1, and then West Coast 25 to 1.
And you have Purdue. And you also got Purdue. Yeah.
So I think there's some value there right now.
What was that number, Alex? 2-1?
Plus Big Ten?
Yeah.
Plus 170 right now.
That's a good number.
I don't know if it's going to
Right.
be there long.
Oh, yeah, so there's a big game this weekend, and
Which game?
Duke, Michigan, and right now we got Michigan plus 330, and then we got Duke at plus 650. Okay, Duke knocks them off. Is this the best time to grab Duke at plus 650? Because if they do end up beating Michigan, won't that go down drastically to a point where you'll never be able to?
I would think so, yes. And that game's at Madison Square Garden where Duke loves to play.
Right.
Yeah, neutral court game. When you mentioned Michigan earlier, the games they won, what was most impressive is the beatdown they gave the Zags early in the year.
40 points.
And that was a loaded Gonzaga team. After that, they lost their center Ike for a short period of time, and then they lost their best power forward. I actually had a big bet on San Francisco on a money line bet, 14 to 1
To win the West
to win the game against Gonzaga, and went down to the wire. San Francisco missed a 3 at the buzzer to win the game, but I was taking 18.5 in a game that the Zags had their 2 best players out of the lineup. That is the one thing that I don't need to watch because the injury information that I've gotten this year is the best I've ever had. And I'm not getting it for everybody. I've developed it, and I am not doing anything different than anybody has. But I've developed a program for social media to dig down deep into when an injury comes out to find out who the first person was to release that information. So now I'm rating out the people on social media who release information first to find out who the best in the business is in getting that information. So when they send something, I get it right away.
That Duke game is in Washington, D.C. It's not at Madison Square Garden. It's at Washington, D.C. Ken, let me ask you, where do you have
It's in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah. Where do you have Kansas?
So I would have Michigan a 2-point favorite in that game against
You
Duke.
would?
I think they'll be about 1 probably.
Okay.
I could shave that down to 1. I could see Pick because they are 2 great teams.
Where do you have Kansas?
You asked me about Illinois earlier. They've got a guy that just came back. One of their better players just came
From a
back
broken
last
hand.
game. And that boosts them up. They're about number 6 in the country right now, the Illini. Kansas, I think they're down the list a little bit too. They got the great freshman. They got number 22 in the country.
This might be Self's best coaching job he's done.
Yeah, he's done a good job.
Yeah. Because this DP, this Peterson kid, wants to take himself out of games and he's hurt. And, I think he's got to the point where he just feels like he's better off going without him, but he'll take him if he's healthy.
They are a typical Kansas team, though. Great at home and just barely above average on the road.
Yep.
Bet them at home.
What else you got, Jim?
Me?
Yeah.
You're asking questions.
Well, you get into baseball, so are you still looking at baseball just pitchers first 5 innings?
Yes.
That's your thing.
Well, yeah. If you're gonna bet pitchers, it's pretty hard to go beyond the first 5 because you're getting into the bullpens, and that's a whole nother study. That you're talking about work. You're talking about how deep's the bullpen, who's going to be in there, who was used yesterday, who's tired, who's not. I mean, you're talking about a lot of work. And so I focus. If I'm going to use a pitcher, it's got to be first 5 innings, either for or against.
Alex, you bet baseball?
I do.
Same thing? First 5?
So, truly, last year was the first time I really went through the grind and bet it every single day and
Oh,
really
wow.
followed and kept up with it. I mean, if I had plays, I would take some days off. But really starting with his power ratings as well. But we were actually talking about it, and it was probably around the All-Star break where I said, can we try and program something to focus on first fives more? Because I follow the starting pitchers the most, right? And I found that it would probably be better to look just at the first five and try and have a better power rating for the pitchers with that, right?
You can't lose first fives in extra innings either. So that's, I would much prefer. I think that's a great strategy. And like Jim said, take the bullpens out of it. If I was to bet baseball, that's the way I would go. And I'm betting my baseball that I bet's college baseball and AAA baseball. Since they started putting that on the board, I've bet the AAA baseball for about 3 years now.
Who do you like in college baseball this year?
UCLA is absolutely loaded.
Okay.
They've
I
got
heard
a
their
great-
shortstop could be the number one pick.
He probably will be. I think he's a junior this year. Great offensive player. Doesn't have the numbers though.
Locks
the
or
guy guys
Lofty
have.
or something like
You
that.
know, you have to adjust their stats to where they play. So Jackie Robinson Stadium in Los Angeles is one of the best pitchers parks in baseball. If you put this kid in a hitter's ballpark, UNLV. If he was at UNLV, he would break the all-time record for home runs in a season. He would break that record because he's that great of a hitter. But when you're playing at UCLA, tough place to hit. But he's a great player. Georgia Tech has a ton of great players this year. Georgia Tech may be one of the teams that I'm probably going to be rooting for. Mississippi State's another one. I'm trying to go off the grid a little bit. LSU's still good. North Carolina's good. The main players in baseball are still there. But two teams off the grid, Georgia Tech and Mississippi State.
You've got a lot of futures because you're digging
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
futures you can find somebody off the grid, you get a big
Yeah,
number.
right. Yeah, I had Mississippi State at 300-1 a couple of years ago, and they just missed getting the regional. If they get the regional, they actually would have gotten the super regional as well and would have gotten to the World Series. That's why I like them again this year. It's good coach, good program, good players. So they'll do much better. They're not as high this year. I forget what I saw them at 6-1. I haven't bet anybody yet because I like to let a couple weeks get in the books because some good teams don't play well early and then they turn it on. So you get a much better number, I think.
Hey, speaking of this, good way to close the show here. Your guy, the quarterback from Ole Miss, he's back.
Yeah, I think gave him
Yeah.
another year.
Yeah, because a week ago he wasn't. Now he's here. Now you should be excited.
Now, what do you think of him?
Oh, he's a great quarterback. Loved watching him play.
Yeah.
Dual threat guy that can make plays.
He could make plays with his legs, great arm, accurate. I was very impressed with him. They now gave him another year after he appealed to the high
Yeah.
court.
Miami's the Hurricanes defense was the real deal this year. It's why they got to the championship,
Yeah.
and it's why they covered because the defense. And he made that defense look bad in the second half.
did.
I thought for sure I had Mississippi in that game, and I thought for sure I'm winning this bet because of this quarterback. He could make plays. So amazing. It's a different world. Alabama has they brought in a guy that played in the NBA already or was drafted in the NBA. He played 4 games and then a judge said he can't play anymore. But they did well. If Alabama would have had that kid, Badako, I think is his name. If they would have had him and they would have let him play the rest of the season, Alabama's in the running to win it all because he would have been a dominant defensive force come March.
Wow.
Alex, who's the early favorite for college football next year?
Oh. I don't know that far ahead yet. Remember, I'm
College
doing
football.
hockey. We got a lot of things.
I didn't know if
going
you
on.
already had maybe some early stuff on it already. Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Well, actually, I mean, Indiana is the favorite, right? And now if Mendoza, wherever Mendoza gets drafted, now they got Josh Hoover from TCU, who actually people were betting on him to win the Heisman last year. So I think he's going to do pretty good under Cignetti.
Well, Cignetti said he wants to do it again to prove everybody he can do it, and it wasn't a fluke. So we'll see. I don't count the guy out now.
Right.
So
Look at that. It all came down to coaching. I mean, he brought in the right players to fit, and he's going to do it again because it's not just a one-trick pony. This guy dominated at 3 different levels. He was amazing at James Madison, the program he built at James Madison.
yeah.
Look at how good they were this year. Even after he left them in great shape when he left. I think he was 52-9 at James Madison. That was his record there. And when he took the job, they weren't very good.
Yeah.
He turned them around.
Wow.
Before we transition this to your house next week, we got to do something before we go. At least you and I do, and I think everybody here does. We need to thank Albert Scalliot, the proprietor here at Don DeMarco's, who sponsors this and puts this show on for the last 3 years. Albert, thank you so much. It's because of you that we're all here. Let's give a round of applause to Ken White, his daughter Alex, the legend Jim Feist. My name is Tommy Canale. We will see you in August. And at the beginning of the year, you said you weren't going to sit next to me. You did on there. This all season you did. Next season you're at the end. You're on the other end of the table.
My choice.
My choice.
My choice.
I will see everybody in August. Have a great summer, everybody.